So good question by D Disciple, guy I greatly respect, and he's brought up the question of Melee and Brawl, had individual events that kind of grew and flourished, but Smash Four, is always kind of a Smash Four only national hasn't really happened, and if we really look at the general landscape. And I look at the TOs of the Smash majors and who runs them. It's usually not by Smash 4 community figureheads. Off the top of my head, I can think of Get On My Level, which is run by TO Joe, and I think he does run all games. He's a big, Smash guy, but I would say that his primary focus is on Brawl slash Smash 4, so I would consider him more of a Smash 4 guy than a Melee guy, even though, he does support all games, even 64. But if we look at all the other events we have in the year, Genesis 3, that's DBR, primarily Melee people. Big House, primarily Melee people. Evo CEO or FGC. Super Smash Con, run by an outside entity. So I wouldn't. They run all games, but pretty much, we kind of run into this issue and question of leverage and security and sustainability. Of, well, what if Melee figurehead just said like, well, Nintendo is screwing us left and right, so like, why are we running Smash 4 events if we don't actually like Smash 4? And maybe one day they decide to drop it. I'm not saying that's actually going to happen, but it puts Smash 4 as a scene at risk because the way it's being created, it's being reliant on other things to help it flourish. And I'm not saying they're trying to leech or anything, but at the end of the day, there might be a day where the FGC says like we're not running Smash events anymore, or Genesis or Big House, for whatever reason they might. I'm not saying they will. Say like, you know what, we're only going to run Melee this year, and this kind of leaves a big void during the year where it's like, well, okay, like, what are the big events that we can rely on, that we can trust within, our own Smash 4 community to say like, hey, like, we know that this guy will run it, and that they are capable of hosting a 2 to 4,000 man event. There's not too many of those, in general, but in Smash 4, I can only really think of Toronto Joe who can do that. I look at Champ, great guy. Most of his events are regional size. They're 400 people, and I'm not sure if he wants to take the financial burden and the overall burden of trying to find a venue and work through all that, because it's a nightmare to run a national level event. Tantalus, great guy, really respect from BGBC, runs regional events. He does them very well. I'm not sure if he's willing to step up to the plate and go out of his way to do a large scale event, because to be a good TO and be a good event coordinator are two very different things. There's also Bear, phenomenal TO. I wouldn't doubt that he would be able to do one, but at the same time, he primarily plays the role of logistics and TO guy. He's not looking into large venues, managing all that fun stuff. He is looking into running a great logistical tournament event. And so this kind of runs an issue in the long run, because let's say, more Smash events come out, the Melee figureheads, they get old enough that they've moved on with life. Let's say Bobak and Joe Guy, they get married and have kids, they can't really run anymore. CEO and Evo say, well, it's been long enough. We want to support other games. We're not really interested in Smash 4. Just hypothetically speaking, then you run yourself at risk of not knowing 2 to 3 years from now what are your big events going to be. Are you really confident that Big House is going to keep running Smash 4? I mean, more than likely, yes, but they might not. Evo, they might not. They might just drop Smash. We don't know that for sure. And so you want to, it's like good business practice, right? Like if I told you, like I ran my business and like my business depended on 6 other people, and if they don't work, then I don't have a business, then you'd probably call me out and say like, that's an awful, very insecure business plan, and like I don't want to invest into you. And so that's a big worry for Smash 4. And I really do hope that the mid-size regionals, they're doing a great job. But I think what we need to do for Smash 4 is that there needs to be these ambitious people that can figure out how to run events. Maybe they follow Jabali around. Maybe they get mentorship lessons from Juggle Guy, and learn the ropes and learn the logistics and learn all the hardships that you need to go through to get a grand scale event, so that if one day, like let's say Evo is not satisfactory for Smash 4 in July, Smash 4 can complain all they want and say, well, we're just going to go to this event or we're just going to boycott it. You can only boycott so many events before you realize, hey, like you're not running any events of your own. So like what you're going to realize is you're going to be stuck with, kind of average events because you have no leverage. If like let's say Genesis were to be run roughly the same time as Evo hypothetically, or Genesis caliber event around Evo, and Smash Bros were like, well, we're just going to go to Genesis because Evo's not satisfactory. Like that's a lot more leverage for the community because they realize that there are other better products available that are run. Whereas, there are so many events where if Smash 4 rejects everything and says like, oh, I'm just not going to attend this event, then lo and behold, you may not have any events to attend. And so that's where Smash 4 kind of as a community has very little leverage because a lot of people realize like, hey, like you guys don't run a lot of your own events. And it's not for me to like laugh at the Smash 4 community or say like you guys suck, but it does bring up a need that there needs to be event coordinators that, kind of rise up and step up to the plate and, learn the ropes. And I really do hope that one day that Smash 4 provides for other communities in the long run. Maybe 5 years from now, like a Smash 4 TO runs, Melee on the side, and they're creating these big luxurious events where they can run 3-stock, they can run best of 5 at top 64, they can run exhibitions, and they can give themselves the flexibility because it's their own event. They don't have to report to anybody. They don't have to go to Evo and say like, we want these pool times, we want top 8 on this hour. Because if you run your own event and it becomes largely successful, you set the roles. You set what the terms, you set whatever you want, and everything else takes a back seat because that's your event. And so I really do hope that this, eventually that does happen. I don't know who's the magic person that, comes out like Mary Poppins and, does all that, but there's a growing need for it. And I hope that, that within the community, maybe now, or maybe there's an outsider that already has a lot of expertise in event coordination, comes in, they have an interest in Smash 4, and they realize, hey, like I want to create a large Smash 4 national. And I think that'd be pretty cool.